These are the Akko V3 Creamy Purple Pro switches, the latest in the Akko V3 switch lineup. Thanks to Akko.eu for sending these over. Check out the affiliate links below for 5% off on the Akko.eu and Akko.com website, or just use discount code KEEPFACE at checkout. I'm just going to give you a really quick review and sound test on these switches today, without comparison to the rest of the V3 lineup, which I would usually do. This is because the Creamy Purple Pro switch stands alone for me and doesn't warrant comparison to its own lineup, which is kind of odd really. More on that later. In terms of the standout specifications, they are a tactile long pole switch with a very short 3mm travel. They have a nylon bottom housing, polycarbonate top housing and a nylon stem. We're back to the normal stem on this one, as opposed to the box dust-free stems they've been using more recently in the V3 Pro lineup, and there is factory lube on the stem rails and legs. Just to go off on a bit of a tangent here, I've tested most of the Akko V3 and Akko V3 Pro switches and have kind of lost sight of what the V3 lineup is these days, especially having now taken a look at the Creamy Purple Pros. It seemed like they were creating a line of very similar sounding switches with the same material ingredients, but with options in terms of weights and feedback to change the feel. Even though the line of switches started out with normal stems with the V3 Cream Yellows and the V3 Cream Blues, which then evolved into the box stems with the V3 Pro switches, the materials were generally the same with a nylon bottom housing, polycarbonate top and POM stem. As the line has continued to grow, it's become less consistent in terms of the materials, at least according to external sources. Switches like the V3 Piano Pro, V3 Crystal Pro and now the V3 Creamy Purple Pro are all using different material combinations to the rest of the line, so I'm just not seeing this as a single line of switches anymore, as there is no constant across them. The materials changed, the travel lengths changed, the stems changed, and so the sound and feel changes. The only constant is that they are all very inexpensive, but that doesn't single them out from the rest of their switches, as the CS line seems to have been discontinued. Anyway, let's have a listen in my mode Envoy, where I'm running no foams and an aluminium plate. And that, folks, is why I said these switches stand alone for me in the V3 lineup, at least the ones I've tested. They have a very nice sound profile on the clacky side in this board, but that's influenced by my preference and building out with no foams and a metal plate. If you wanted a more thocky sound, a different build and the use of foams would facilitate this. I don't usually like switches with a really short travel, but I don't even notice it with these, and that's because the tactile bump is heavy and early, leaving you with quite a bit of travel left after you drop off the tactile bump. They are really nice. I've always been a fan of the V3 and V3 Pro switches, but I've always considered them nice budget switches which belong in nice budget keyboards. They would be punching above their weight in anything other than a budget keyboard in my opinion. They've never hit the status of a budget switch like the Gateron Milky Yellows, which have a very low price tag but don't sound or feel out of place in premium custom keyboards, giving them almost cult status. I feel like the V3 Creamy Purple Pros may just end up in this cult status category for those who like a really nice tactile switch. I took my favourite tactiles, the Gateron Root Beer Floats, out of the Envoy to test the V3 Cream Purples, and the difference between them is marginal. So marginal that choosing between them could even just be a simple case of preference, not better and worse. That's with it in mind that I've hand lubed the Gatorons versus the factory lube on the Creamy Purple Pros, and the fact that the Creamy Purple Pros will run you 22 cents per switch from Akko.com or 26 euro cents per switch from Akko.eu, versus the hefty 75 euro cents per switch that I paid for the root beer floats. Hell of a set of budget tactiles which I can't recommend highly enough. And that's it. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.